Well, welcome to the More You NoCo. I'm Nathan Weinland with Remax Alliance, and today I am joined by Matt Weaver with Excel Mortgage. Matt, introduce yourself.
Hi there. Name's Matt Weaver. I'm lender here in Colorado for the last couple of years and been a local here for a good 20 or so and excited to be on your show.
Awesome. Yeah, I was born and raised in Fort Collins, been doing real estate for 25 plus years and have gotten to know the city rather well in my entire lifetime.
Very nice.
Yes. Well, today's topic is going to be about investing in real estate. Mm-hmm. And there's obviously some challenges to that and some great advantages, but it seems to be really a tough thing for most people to get into just because of the huge demands and barriers in which you find with that. Right. But you've got a really good solution to that, so I'm going to be excited to hear about a couple different ways to view this.
The cool thing that we kind of found over the last couple of years, and I know a lot of people have done this unintentionally, is we kind of called it nomading. So you buy a property with 5% down or the minimum down, you live in it for a year or two, and then you just kind of repeat every year and then just turn them into rentals instead of sell them. It's a lot easier to acquire properties over the years, and it's a really effective strategy for really anybody that's okay with moving, but especially some of those younger people that can't save up 20-25% down.
Yeah, that is a huge barrier, and I've definitely run into that with a lot of the younger clients that I've had and made the suggestion, and I have had a few that have successfully done it over the years, and they've had great success and great flexibility. But first off, let's talk a little bit about some of the advantages of owning investment property in general. I mean, Why would you want investment property over stock market or stock investments or bonds or anything else that's out there?
Yeah, so personally, I think it's safer, which is weird to say, but you've got a lot of fluctuation when you're dealing with stock market and some of that other type of stuff. But with real estate, at least where we are here in Northern Colorado, it has always gone up at least somewhat or stayed stable. And a lot of the benefits you get from real estate is you have your appreciation, you have your loan pay down and your debt pay down. When you have an investment property, then you have rental income and cash flow coming in on top of that. And you have depreciation, which is one of the greatest things ever. I'm not a tax person, so don't quote me on it, on anything, but...
Yeah, we're not CPAs, we're not attorneys, so disclosure.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's a lot of depreciation benefits and stuff like that you can get out of owning rental properties, and that can save you a lot of money come tax time.
Let's take a look at each of those in a little bit more detail because there's a few terms in there that I'm not sure everybody will really know. Most people look at an investment property and say, I want a rental because I want cash flow. Right. I want to have, I want my payments and so forth and my costs in this to be $500 a month and I want my rent to be $1,000 a month. Right. Or, double that. But then when you really start to look at all the costs that are involved and so forth, especially in a market like Fort Collins or even all of Northern Colorado, it really gets tough to try to find good affordable properties that rent high. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely some other areas in the country where the cost of houses is a lot cheaper and rents are still pretty darn high. So your investment, your rate of return on those properties seems a lot higher based on the cash flow.
Right.
But overall, an investment property here in Northern Colorado seems to always beat those based on the appreciation levels. Mm-hmm. So though that is definitely one factor of your investment is going to be the cash flow that comes in from it, that's not the whole picture. There's about 7 or 8 different pieces, and you've mentioned quite a few of them right there. Right. So you obviously have the cash flow that comes in, and that's going to be important to some people. And some people look at it as, hey, this is my retirement. So if I break even on it on a monthly basis, I mean, at least, or even if it costs me $100 or $200 or $300 a month,
it's a win.
At least I'm funding my retirement program.
So we've been throwing the word appreciation around a lot, just to make sure everybody knows. Appreciation is an asset that the longer you hold it, the more it's worth. So oversimplified, with a house, you're buying an investment property, putting renters in there, they're paying your mortgage for you, and then the longer you own it, so you buy it for $100,000 in 10, 20 years, here in Northern Colorado, it might be worth $200 or more. So that house appreciated that much. And that's different than depreciation, which we'll get into later. But you had also touched on a little thing in there with, you're trying to live in it for $500 or your mortgage is $500 and you're trying to rent it for $1,000. One of the strategies that young people do a lot that I've seen is house hack. And that goes hand in hand with this nomading model. So
I'm excited to hear about that.
So house hacking is you buy a property and do the exact same thing. You live in it for that year. And instead of just living in it by yourself, the running joke is get rid of your ego kind of a thing. Yeah. And then get a roommate or 2 or 3, depending on where you are. You plus 2, other rules like that in Fort Collins. Sometimes there's a limit.
Sometimes there's city ordinances that might restrict the number of roommates you can have. But
exactly. But then house hack, and you can cover your entire rent or most of your mortgage payment, live there for almost free, and then just save and invest all the rest of your money. And that'll allow you to continually invest and keep growing and go from there. So that's a really, really cool thing.
And that's what I've really seen as far as people trying to cover the larger down payments, or not down payments, but the larger monthly payments when you're in markets like this. Is, I mean, we're renting rooms for a really good amount, yet your house payments are really high. Because, I mean, trying to find a house under $400,000 in Fort Collins is really difficult.
Right.
And now that, in some markets that's going to seem cheap, but in a lot of markets that's twice what you're finding houses for.
Right.
So how do you possibly rent that for enough money? And house hacking sounds like a really good way to do that.
Exactly. And that's a perfect segue into how much do you actually need to put down for houses? So what is that looking like?
Yeah, so traditionally, if I'm just going to go out and buy an investment property,
Right.
I'm going to need 25% down. I understand there's a big difference between 20% down and 25% down when it comes to interest rates and so forth, right?
Right. So lender tip for you, even if you don't do nomading, 20% down, today your interest rate's going to be in the mid threes. So let's say 3.625 on a perfect scenario. With 25% down, exact same person, with 25% down, misspoke, you're going to be in those high threes, so 3.6, 3.7, right in there. With 20% down, you're actually going to be like a 4 or 4.25, maybe even more. It's a huge difference of almost 0.5% in an interest rate by that extra 5%.
Just 5% down.
Right.
That's impressive. But that is a huge threshold for most people. So if I was going to go out and buy an investment property, I'd be looking at least 20% down right now, 25% if I really want to get a good interest rate. I know a quarter of a $400,000 house, I got to shell out $100,000, but then I have closing costs and different things, so I'm going to need more than $100,000. Now, most people are going to get that from the sale of their last property, and that's how they're going to keep buying bigger and bigger properties. But if I'm still staying where I'm at, trying to buy an investment property, I'm looking at cash flow and having to have a big amount down, and that's why we see it not done real often, because that's a huge obstacle to have when you're already house poor because you already bought a real expensive house.
Right. Here's the best thing though. It's 5% down, or 3% for your first time, or 3.5% for FHA. And you can have 2 FHAs. So you don't have that 25% down problem that you're dealing with. You only have to come up with 5% at max. That's amazing. On a $400,000 house, instead of that $100,000 that you're having to come up with to put down, it's 25.
Right.
25, 30K. That's much easier for a 30-year-old professional who's been working and they don't have other sources that their money's going to. Sure. You can save that up in 2 years. It takes budgeting and planning and all that other stuff.
Not with my fund budget.
But house hacking or all those other strategies. And then, so just so you know, first-time home buyers can do Home Ready, Home Possible. That's 3% down. Or a standard conventional loan, you're going to be looking at 5% down. So after the first house, that's probably planned on 5% plus closing costs. Then FHA, you're going to be looking at 3.5% down, and you can have 2 FHA loans at the same time. So you can buy one house for 3%, then you can buy your next 2 houses at 3.5% down each plus closing costs.
Wow.
And then you can start buying them at 5%. So all of a sudden, wow, you just bought a $400,000 house for 3% down for that first one. So let's say $20K total out of pocket.
Right.
Then next year, I was able to save up another $25,000. Cool. I'm going to do an FHA loan and buy another $400,000 house. And then the next year I'm going to do it again. And now all of a sudden, you're 25, 28 years old. You have 3 rental properties. That's passive income that you'll have for the rest of your life if you're smart.
I'm looking forward to getting into more details on that piece.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Let's talk about the rest of the advantages of buying investment properties in general.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the method that you're talking about, especially for 20-year-olds and so forth, is going to be a really cool method to avoiding some of those big restrictions that we've got. Now, you mentioned depreciation a couple of times. So now, houses appreciate. So what in the world is the depreciation piece?
Yeah. So depreciation is something that you do with the IRS. And with taxes come, tax time.
So it's this very clear-cut, simple form. I mean, it's the IRS, so it must be easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
But it's actually not too bad. So my understanding of it always has been your house depreciates over 27 and a half years from when you start, claiming it on your taxes. And if you don't claim it, you don't just get it tacked on later. If you don't claim it, you lose it. So when you buy a house, you have 27 and a half years to write it off, and then it's divided over that time. And then from there, that counts as a tax write-off that can reduce your taxable income.
So it's actually just dropping your tax burden down each year by writing off a piece of of the house that you purchased, that 27.5% piece.
Exactly.
The piece of that. So that's interesting. So you get tax savings for a depreciating asset that's actually appreciating.
Correct.
So do you have to pay that tax back?
So yes, I believe
it's called
that.
recapture tax.
Yep. When you go to sell the house, and then that's treated just like, what is it called?
It's capital gains.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Capital gains.
So then that can definitely be a hindrance 30 years from now when you have fully depreciated a property. So I've definitely heard people that are talking about, it's a fully depreciated property, so I might just hang on to it because they have this huge recapture tax if they go to sell it.
Right.
But you can also, that's all based on the basis of what you purchased, plus if you improve the property, the basis goes up. There's this whole complex thing in order to try to manage your basis on the property so you pay as little of that recapture tax as possible when you sell it in capital gains on what you sell.
And going way down the rabbit hole real quick, that's when 1031s come in handy, and that's when you can do inheritance and trusts, and there's a whole bunch of other things you can do to structure to avoid ever paying that tax and pass it off to kids and other things like that.
A wonderful way to pass wealth
But
later in life is a fantastic approach to using property for that.
So the long story short of that, though, you can defer paying those taxes pretty much indefinitely.
Until you did.
Until you die. So huge, cool little things there that rental properties do that you can't really do any other way. You're always going to have to pay the taxes.
Well, if you're looking at stock purchases and so forth, when you go to sell those, you pay capital gains.
Right.
And any investments like that, except none of those really have a vehicle like a 1031. And the 1031 is the tax code. That's why they call it a 1031, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically on a 1031, you don't get to handle any of the money. You use a third party in which takes possession of the dollars from the sale, and then that's what you're applying towards the purchased property of a like-kind property. But that's even pretty flexible. I mean, a like-kind property can be going from residential detached units or attached units into an office tick or something along that line. I mean, you can really get some flexibility out of your 1031.
You can 1031 the single-family shack and turn it into a 10-plex if you wanted.
Yeah.
Like whatever you wanted to do there, it has the
And just
options.
keep deferring those taxes further and further down the line. Yeah,
So-
absolutely. And when you pass away, you get a step up in that basis. So if you buy a property for $200,000, and this is how it is today.
Right.
If you buy a property for $200,000 and then you end up passing away, but now the house is worth $500,000, and your kids inherit it, then the basis steps up to that $500,000. So that recapture tax on that difference at this point
Gone.
just kind of goes away. Again, we are not CPAs or tax attorneys, so we may or may not know what we're talking about. So do consult with a real professional. But that's.
Always talk to a real tax professional CPA, but we're not bad.
Well, I feel like there's a lot of really good benefits to investment properties. Again, now we're just back to that whole obstacle of really that high amount down. Now you've alluded to just going out and doing an FHA loan, which is a really interesting concept, something that in my 20 years, 25 years, I've never really thought of except for when I'm working with a real young couple or a real young individual, and they want to get in their first property and they do an FHA loan or they do a 5% down conventional or something along that line.
Right.
They get into that property, and then I always have this conversation with them about 2 years in. They've got their condo and they're pretty much ready to get into something larger. And they ask me, hey, should we be keeping this as a rental property or not? And of course, there are so many factors to that, looking at cash flow, looking at where they're at, and so forth. But my gut instinct is always, yes, keep it as a rental.
Right.
Because looking at appreciation in this area has done absolutely phenomenal things in the last couple of years.
Right,
But
right.
even overall, even through the housing bubble, it's still stayed positive in Fort Collins. And it's done very well. And traditionally, over the last 50 years, real estate has always done very well in the long run. As long as you don't have to sell it when you don't want to.
Right,
When you sell
right.
real estate when you want to, you always do well on it, right? That's the typical saying.
Break into FHA loans real quick.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that because that's if we can buy that first house on an FHA, what are the advantages? What are the pieces of that?
FHA is really cool. So everyone kind of gets scared of FHA loans because, it's a government loan or it's got mortgage insurance and all this other stuff. That's part of what makes it really cool. So FHA has a lot cheaper of interest rates and lower down payment requirements. Same with credit requirements. Normally the loan, so we'll do the quick loan background. Conventional loans, 620. FHA, you can go down to 580 with 3.5% down. If below that, you have to put a little more. And then you have required mortgage insurance, but a cheap interest rate. So for today's example, with perfect credit, good scenario, 3.5% down, that whole shebang, you're probably going to be getting like a 2.5% interest rate on an FHA loan today.
Wow.
While a conventional is about a 3.125. So way cheaper interest rate.
Right.
The downside is it has required mortgage insurance.
How much does that make up that difference at this point?
Usually an FHA loan is going to be, on a $400,000 house, about $25 more a month. It's all at the end of the day.
So what's that interest rate spread?
So that's...
Let's test your math.
Okay.
So if we're at a difference of 2 3/4 or whatever you just said, as well as a conventional, conventional, of course you'd have to get to 20% down before you would actually be able to drop off your mortgage insurance.
Right.
Either way, FHA mortgage insurance is permanent.
Yep, it's permanent and set at 0.85, while a standard or conventional loan today is about 0.4%.
Got it.
So you're going to have about twice the mortgage insurance, but usually about 0.75% cheaper of an interest rate. The total monthly payment usually ends up about the same. You're saving a lot of interest that you'll pay over 30 years.
Yeah.
Because of a lot cheaper interest rate.
And in this kind of scenario, you're talking about keeping that FHA loan. Like a lot of times we look at FHA loans, you're like, yeah, but you're not going to have this FHA loan for 30 years.
Right.
You're going to have it for your typical 5 to 7, and you're going to roll it off, you're going to buy something else, or you're going to refinance this property. But in the scenario we're talking about, these are probably going to be long-term loans because you're going to want to keep your primary financing as you move forward and not redo the loan and acquire your interest rate is going to be a lot higher.
Exactly.
That investment property. Yeah.
It's not out of the norm. Like we did one a couple weeks ago. So at middle of November, you're getting 2.25% interest rate without buying the rate down.
So in summary on that, I mean, really FHA is not something to be scared of. It can be a great tool for purchasing not just your first property, but really looking at it as far as keeping that loan for the long run.
Perfect segue into conventionals. So conventional loan, that's kind of the standard cookie cutter normal loan that everyone thinks of when they're talking about financing. So your down payment there, standard 5%, you're going to have your mortgage insurance, competitive interest rates, everything should be good. Your first property you can do with 3% down as a first-time home buyer. That's one of those fabled first-time home buyer programs.
Right.
That's awesome. So there's income limits there. It's like 80% of the average income in the area, but that's still not bad. 3% down, you're buying $400,000 house for 12 grand plus closing costs. It's pretty good. That's really good. And then after that, you're going to have your mortgage insurance on top because you're putting a little less down. You're probably going to be about 0.5% there on mortgage insurance.
Right.
We've been talking a lot about mortgage insurance. Mortgage insurance, it's commonly known as MIP, stuff like that. All it is when you put less than 20% down on a loan, it's a way for the bank to be safe about lending less than 20%. So they charge a little bit extra every month so that way they can have a safe investment for you for not having a bunch down. Traditionally, before 2000, you were having to put down 20, 30, 40% sometimes on loans.
Well, we've definitely seen
things have loosened.
Other competitive programs kind of come about due to need.
Right.
You know, when you were requiring 20, 25% down, which was your standard loan, the bank wanted to be well protected.
Right.
And so mortgage insurance is kind of a natural protect the lender. The buyers really don't get much out of mortgage insurance except for the loan,
Right.
Which requires that to protect the lender in case of default.
Exactly.
So that they're a little bit more comfortable with not having that 20% or 25% down.
You'd be surprised at how much you can buy for how little you need, which is really, really crazy.
Yeah.
How important is cash flow to you personally when you're talking to your clients about, hey, this might be a good rental property, or hey, here's what this is going to be? How much do you value cash flow over some of those other things?
So as far as cash flow goes, that's going to be different for every single person that I talk to. So the importance to me is only what the importance is to that investor. So I certainly have investors that say, I need a loss.
Right.
So I'm going to go out and buy a property and I want to make sure that I have a loss on this. Because I need tax write-offs, I need different things, I'm leaning into depreciation, that type of thing.
Perfect.
So I'm looking for a different property than somebody says, I need cash flow out of this. I want $500 a month cash flow. Then we're looking at different areas, we're looking at different things to that effect.
Gotcha.
And then somewhere in the middle, somebody wants to look at this and say, well, I really want to treat this like it's my retirement plan. I'm happy to feed it $100 or $200 or $300 a month and let the appreciation pick up on the other side of that.
Gotcha. Nice.
So it's all those things working together.
As a you personal question then.
Yeah. So for me, what I would want is to accelerate maybe a 15-year mortgage personally, maybe even feed it a little bit or at least break even on it, and try to get them to the point where they're paid off and become much more flexible asset for me.
Nice. So I'm the exact opposite. I would try and prioritize cash flow with just minimizing loss on other areas to then just roll all of that money into buying the next property. So because then once you have a couple, you can just keep rolling that forward and rolling it forward and rolling it forward. And then once you have enough, then you can kind of rebalance and switch things as you need. But yeah.
And that would be the other piece is if you got somebody that they need that cash flow out of the house in order to get ready for the next property.
Right.
Then that's going to be part of that formula. If you've got somebody that has a lot of cash earning equivalent that they can put that away
then there's other
and
benefits.
then still feed it, then that's a different person. That's why it's so important to sit down with your investor or whoever you're talking to and say, what do you need? When I have that, first-time home buyer getting ready to buy the second one and they say, hey, should we keep this as a rental property? These are the kind of conversations we're having. I don't know. What do you want to get out of it? What are your goals? Is this a good vehicle for that or should we sell this?
What do the numbers look like?
Is it mom's house you grew up in and you've got this great emotional attachment to it and though it would make a great rental property, you've got this huge emotional attachment to it. Let's sell it. Let's get rid of that and get into something that you can treat as an investment. That's a really important piece.
Right.
And that's important in your nomadic approach as well. Because if you're renting your own personal house, you went in and you put your heart and soul into, you create this emotional attachment to that property.
Right. Personal experience. I'm nomading myself.
Right.
After about a year, it was like, oh, I don't know if I want to leave. I kind of like living here. And then you're like, oh, do I have to move again?
And then your renter messes something up and you're like, oh, I planted those.
I fixed that myself.
I can't believe you killed those things. I love those plants. Yeah.
But then you look at the numbers later and you're like, oh, okay, never mind. This is a good decision
makes sense,
still. This makes perfect sense. But yeah, it's one of those cool things that you kind of forget exists. Yeah. Like that emotional attachment is very real. It's not just a numbers game. It's a house that you lived in and you took care of. And
yeah, you put in that tile that they just destroyed. It's tough to get over that. And it's so much easier to take a fresh investment and just not have any of that attachment and treat it like numbers. So it's important going into there that you know that emotional attachment is going to exist.
Right.
And you need to, try to let that go. I think that's an important chunk. So that's another piece that we talk about when we first sit down and talk about, is this the right tool for you?
So how do you feel about property managers? Because full disclosure, I manage my own property. But I know a lot of the clients I've worked with that have done this model just go straight to a property manager and just kind of sit it and leave it. What is your thoughts?
Well, personally, between a property manager and not, the thing that keeps you from a property manager is you want the cash flow.
Right, it's like 10%,
Yeah, so
9, 8, 9, 10.
If you're going to be paying them 10%, then you're like, well, that's a big chunk of my payment. If I'm charging $2,000 a month, I don't really want to give up $200 a month.
Right.
And then you start running into the things like, okay, you're having high turnover rates because you're not getting the greatest tenants and so forth, and you get some damages, and you got one that's hard to get out, and you think, gosh, I really would like to use a property manager. It makes that whole hands-off, this is an investment, much easier.
Right.
And some people are just terrible property managers because they just got a big heart and they're like, oh, I understand that you had this come up instead of that. And oh, I understand. And then pretty soon you've got to look at, what your bottom line is as well, and that you're not providing public housing. Right. And so even though it's much easier to keep a tenant on the straight and narrow when you use a property manager because the property manager can use you as, I'm sorry, the landlord isn't going to allow that.
Right.
And it's much more black and white. Where when you're involved, it's easy for you to say, "Oh, I understand. We'll just let you go this month and next month," and you get in trouble that way.
Right. I mean, I know several clients who sold property for that very reason because tenants didn't pay for 6 months.
And then trash the house, and then by the time, and always had a great excuse every single month of what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that definitely happens.
And especially as a new investor, I would recommend property managers for new people because it's safer. There's a lot of legal stuff that you're going on too, that you're marketing your property, you're signing leases, you're collecting money, you're doing all these other things. Sometimes the safe bet is just let a professional handle it. Yeah, it's 10%, but it's 10% for your sanity and time and effort.
Yeah. And they call at 3 a.m. Hey, the plumbing's leaking or whatever. Yeah.
You don't get that call. The manager does. Right. That's worth 10% by itself.
I totally agree. Yeah. So in summary, I mean, it really makes a big difference whether what position you're in, whether a property manager makes sense or not. Sometimes you can't have the cash flow work with a property manager, so you have to do it yourself.
Right.
But they're definitely worth the headaches. So what I want to do is I want to just kind of walk through what a scenario would look like for a first-time home buyer and talk a little bit about just not being in the 20s.
Okay.
In order to do this. So now the people that I've helped have been 20-something years old, and they're rolling through and acquiring property over the next 30 or 40 years.
Right.
And then getting them paid off, and then using that in a lot of different ways. One of which is refinancing that property once it gets paid off, and then taking that chunk of money and living off it or traveling on it. One is just continuing to build into their retirement with that cash flow as those properties get paid off.
Right.
So there's a lot of advantages in the long run there. So you think of somebody in their 50s or 40s and so forth, say, oh, it's probably too late to start that cycle, but it really isn't.
So actually, I have no names, but I'll use a scenario. Someone I started working with 2 years ago. One of the first people that I saw successfully do this nomad strategy. She worked for the post office, didn't make the ton of money, wasn't this crazy investor or anything like that, had a little bit of a savings, just got out of a marriage, just kind of, what am I gonna do for the rest of my life? And so she's sitting down and she finds on this idea and starts the process, and she buys her first place, and she got lucky. She got a duplex over in Greeley.
Oh, nice.
She house hacked it. So what she did is she got another person living on the other half, and then she lived in one side, and the people on the other half of the duplex paid 75% of her rent. She was able to put all of that extra money in savings into buying the next one, and then a year later, on the dot, she rolled that in, and then bought her next place. And then this time she bought another duplex. Okay, cool. Did the exact same thing, rolled that for another 2 years this time. And then I think she's actually house hunting now, and she's going to be buying so she got under contract on a new build, and she'll be buying just a single family also in Greeley this summer. Or it's supposed to close like June, July.
So she pretty much have 5 units at this point.
And she has 5 units working at the post office as a normal, recently divorced, 50-year-old person. That's crazy.
And will have a ton of wealth in 10 years.
She has retirement strategy. If she has tenants in all these places, if she wants, she can pull cash out of these properties in a couple of years and use it to buy more properties. She can use it to go on a vacation. I usually wouldn't say pull cash out to go on vacations, but if that's what you want, do it. If you want to sell one of them, use all that money to pay off another one and live off the cash flow, you have that opportunity and option. So it's not just a 20-year-old, I'm going to start investing and do all this stuff. It's anybody can do it. I know somebody who's retired and they're qualifying for their other properties off of their rental from their cash flows, and they don't even claim Social Security yet. There's so many options that you can do to keep rolling this in. Now, quick disclaimer, we should have talked about this at the start. So the way that this works, the lending-wise, there's a couple important things I should say. Regardless if it's FHA or conventional, no matter how you're doing that, so you're buying your property, you have to live in it for a year.
Right.
There's no exceptions. You got to live in this for 12 months. The reason is when you sign the note, which is that big stack of piece of paper at the closing table, one of the lines on it says you agreed to live in this as a primary residence and live in it for 12 months.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm just going to buy one every other month and let's go. I'm going to move in it for a day.
Yeah.
Well, now you're treating them like investment properties. That's mortgage fraud.
That was not the intent.
Please, yeah.
Right.
That's mortgage fraud. Please don't do it.
Right.
Fines are heavy, very scary. If you're doing it 12 months on the dot every year, you're perfectly fine. They're not going to hold you to it if it's 11 months in a day. But if you start to make a habit over it, it'll start to get red flags.
It's better to be on the on the far side than it is trying to explain why.
Exactly.
And it always comes down to what the intent is.
Right.
Was your intent to buy it as an investment property?
Exactly.
If you live in it for a year, then it's hard to say, well, no, that wasn't my intent.
Right.
And yeah.
And it's also much easier to buy, I'll call it a lesser living condition property and then go nicer than the other way around.
Sure.
So what I mean by that is, well, you're just getting started into investing and you buy a single family house and it's a nice place and everything's great and it's just a nice normal house. Well, hey, there's a duplex or there's a fourplex, so 4-unit property. I'm going to live in one of the units and rent out the other 3. Awesome cash flow wise. But now you go to the bank and say, hey, I'm going to move out of my nice 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom house and move into another building, connected walls with 4 other people in a quarter of the living space. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a red flag. Mm-hmm. What they're going to think is, oh, well, you're not going to live there. You're going to live in your nice house and just fill that with a unit.
Right.
So that's why they have that rule. You have to live in it. It's a lot easier to buy that fourplex and then go and start buying duplexes and better quality of stuff after. If you're like, well, I can't afford a $900,000 place, that makes sense. Cool thing, you can actually use the rents from those other 3 units to offset your payment. If you're buying a $700,000 fourplex and your monthly payment's going to be $3,000 a month, it's a lot. It's a big monthly payment. Well, I only qualify for $2,000. Cool. Get copies of the leases from the people who currently own it for those other 3 units that you're not moving into. You can then offset that payment. Well, let's say it's $1,000 a room, because that makes sense. So now that's $3,000 being offset. you're only qualifying for a $700, $500 a month payment versus this reality of $3,000 that you're going to be paying.
As long as you have those leases signed.
Correct.
That you can then provide and say, well, out of this 4 units, here's my other 3 renters. That's awesome. So in summary on that, you don't really need to be in your 20s to start a nomadic approach.
Correct.
And there's going to be some intent. You're going to have to be purchasing with the intent for it to be your primary residence.
For at least a year.
For at least a year, right. Okay, that's good.
And you can offset with leases. Point, you can only offset with leases for multifamily. You cannot offset single family.
Sure, that makes sense. You couldn't rent out part of your basement or whatever. So the last part that I just want to hit real quick is, let's walk through a scenario that you would see with somebody who was starting off with their very first condo and wanted to roll through. So we go out, we find a condominium for somebody, or a townhome, or even a small single family, something along that line. FHA loan, conventional, they've got almost no down. How do we get them into something right away?
So we start with a townhome, for example. So you buy a townhome with your FHA loan, 3.5% down. Live in it for a year, and then so this is always the tricky part. After that first year you've lived in it, you have your 3.5% down FHA loan, everything's all good, you start marketing your property. You have to have a signed lease that's going to start within usually about 60 days of closing on your house. So within 2 months, you have to have someone else moving in. Gives you 2 months to find a place and move and kind of do that whole shebang. Once you start your house hunt, I usually say start looking to rent your house around then. Once you're under contract, really pull the trigger and get your place rented. Then you offset it with a lease and a deposit. You buy your next house. So now you have someone living in your current house, you have a signed lease, and you have a signed deposit. You can show the underwriter, hey, look, someone's making my payment for me, or they will. I should be all good. Now I can qualify for this house. So you saved up another, let's say $20,000 over that year or 2 years, and you found a really nice place just over on the other side of I-25, nice single family house. Now you have your townhome, and you just moved into this other one, and I'm gonna get 2 roommates in this next house.
And so what's your loan kind of look like on that? Are we doing another FHA, or are we?
If you can do another FHA,
whatever makes sense, probably.
Yeah, whatever's cheaper for you. Usually I see people do 3% or 3.5% on that first one, and then they start going into the 3.5%. So here's the other benefit of. So there's some people that would prefer, I'll pay a little higher interest rate to get rid of that $120 a month in 5 years. So one advantage. But let's say you bought the second one with a conventional loan. So 5% down conventional on a $400,000 house, you're gonna be looking about 20, 25 grand.
Okay.
So you put that 20, 25 grand plus closing costs down. Now you have second property, you get a roommate to help pay your monthly payment.
House hack, the second one, let's say.
Save your bills. You have this person paying, and then you just leave this nice, perfect tenant in here. A year or 2 later, hey, I saved up another 20, 30 grand. Let's repeat and do it again. Now my job is here and I want us to keep where I am. I like the neighborhood, so here's another spot just up the way. Let's find this house. As long as it's an equal or better house like we talked about before, you're good to go. Buy another 5% down conventional loan, because now your minimum down, 5% down, or an FHA, 3.5. You only have 2 FHA slots, up to 10 conventionals. So you could do, you have your 1 FHA, you have your 1 conventional. Let's say you just buy in conventional from here on out. Go add another conventional loan. Now you bought your 3rd property, offset with that assigned lease, and you just keep it rolling until you hit that goal of what you want to do. Usually what we say is, pick a dollar amount, or when I have this conversation with investors and we're kind of going over the plan, what is that passive income that you want to see from the rental properties that will make it so you don't want to buy anymore? And usually people say, well, after $2,000 a month or $5,000 a month in passive income, enough so I could quit my job if I wanted, then I can kind of decide what I want to do from doing it. And usually that's about 5 to 6 rental properties is what I've seen. Once you get to that point, you can start rolling it in and paying it off and improving your cash flow in other ways.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's a good investment strategy, a good investment plan.
It is.
Nomadic investing. You've had. Well, thanks, Matt. I really appreciate your time. It was an interesting strategy that I think will work for a ton of different people. I mean, I've been interested in it myself. So I know that some of this content was a bit heavy. It was a bit detailed. So if you have any questions you want to plop down with me or Matt, or me and Matt, and kind of make an investment plan, just reach out to us and we'll be happy to accommodate.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet.